facing you, kind of. Straight ahead.
Just like that, man.
All day on Friday. We're stuck in the 40s all day Friday. May end in a no accumulation expected. This cold on Saturday. From Severe Weather Center 9, the meteorologist keep Monday for high country.
30 seconds.
I'm really struggling, and I'm just looking for help.
I've had advice given to me, but it was confusing and didn't really work.
Recovery Talk helped me help a friend.
I like it. You can call in and
It picks up real well, but
solutions.
yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Recovery Talk helps.
All right, 10 seconds.
Know someone who does? Call us. 828-262.
5, 4, 3, 2.
On WATA.
Good morning and welcome to Recovery Talk, Hope and Help for the Hurting. Our show is broadcast here in the high country, and if you want to be a part of it, if you're in the listening audience, you can give us a call at 828-262-1567. That's 828-262-1567, and I got to not kick this thing down here by my feet because it makes a weird noise during the show. Recovery Talk is brought to you by Freedom Auto Tech. Freedom Auto Tech is been around now for a few months, and it is an auto shop ready to service all your auto needs. I was actually stopped by there just a little while ago, and the lifts are full, but they're taking appointments. Give them a call if you need your car worked on. 828-355-4434. That's 828-355-4434. I want to say hi to everybody that's joining us on Facebook also. Good morning. And the genius Todd is already posting up numbers and whatnot. He's going to take care of us during the show. But it's a beautiful day. I think I'm a little bit in a better mood than normal because I'm leaving tomorrow for a quick weekend trip down to Florida to meet with like a little family reunion. So it's going to be nice. I heard it's going to be really cold this weekend. That's what I heard. So I'm gonna miss out on the cold. Oh darn.
Nice.
Anyway. So for those of you that have been following the show, I don't really talk about how the guests come on, how I choose the guests or anything, and really there hasn't been any kind of science to it. It's really people throughout the week that I run into and talk to, and it always kind of doesn't always kind of, it just always works out just the right way. The right person comes on the right time, and I kind of wanted to explain a little bit more about today's guest because Bryan and I met about 8 years ago, right? About 8 years ago. I've been up here 8 years.
Yeah.
In February, it'll be 8 years. And we have always stayed in touch. We actually we were neighbors for quite a while, and we'd say hi to each other a lot. And we lived at the bottom of the hill. But anyway, Bryan has been in the recovery community. He went to the Freedom Farm program before I did. And we met through the recovery community here. And I had called you maybe a week or two ago. Was it a week or two ago?
Yeah, about a week and a half.
Week and a half ago. And he just happened to call me yesterday, and I still hadn't. I was going into a meeting yesterday evening, and if I hadn't found somebody, I was going to recruit somebody for the show today. Or I was going to brave and be on here myself. There's been an idea of me being here on myself. I don't know if anybody can handle that. I might be pretty boring. But anyway, Bryan calls me, and he was returning a call from a couple weeks ago because he's a terrible friend.
Yeah.
He's an absolutely terrible friend, and it takes him 2 weeks to call people back. I'm lying. That's sarcasm. He apologized immediately. But we ended up talking, and he was basically letting me know that not only was yesterday 10 years of recovery, sobriety, redemption, whatever word you want to put on it, 10 years,
Amen.
Amen, praise God, but you're also leaving us.
Mm.
And it was like, buddy, you have now just signed up for the show. You can't say no. And he almost tried to get out of it, saying that maybe he was going to go to Florida this morning.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, you're not going to Florida. You're coming on the show first.
Yeah.
So, Bryan, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to tease him because Bryan has a way of telling stories that sometimes take a little bit longer than normal. And so we will keep you on track, my friend. Don't worry about it.
That's the return of the phone call.
Yeah, there you go. But you know what, man? Thanks for coming on this morning, ladies and gentlemen. My friend Bryan Brubaker, 10 years, and man, you have got quite a story. And so, you know, the spotlight's on you, my friend. Tell us what you want to tell us. You got a lot to tell us about the last 10 years, obviously.
Yeah.
But tell us maybe a little bit about before coming to the hike, or before the beginning of this 10 years.
Yeah. So, well, let me just preface, I guess, this entire segment that by saying that, you know, I'm merely just an example, right? As any of us are, just an example.
Absolutely.
The story is really all about him. So, yeah, I've been up here 10 years. 10 years as of yesterday to the date. November 7th of '08 is when I came up here from the Charlotte area, Kannapolis, specifically. Life had bottomed out, essentially. I was at my end, as we know it to be. Before we get into that, I guess the last 10 years, which is really the best part of the story, in recovery, and to share what the Lord's done in my life over the course of that time period, which is really the emphasis of the entire process. But I'm originally from North Central Florida, the Ocala area, horse country. Yes.
So look at that. I was finishing your sentence because
Nice.
I know.
Nice. Most people say, you know, when you're from Florida, they think of the coastal areas and
Not Ocala.
the quintessential areas of Florida, but yeah, a little different there. Grew up there and spent the majority of my childhood in the North Palm Beach Gardens area.
Good people come out of that area.
Yeah, so here.
My brother's watching too.
How is he?
Yeah.
Hey, Kenny.
For those of you, that's where I was born. So.
But mom and biological father divorced when I was at a young age, like is the case for a lot of us that find ourselves in recovery at the age of 5. And so from the age of 5 to 14, it was just mom and I. She pretty much raised me during those years. And at the age of 14, my youth pastor, Steve Brubaker, came into our lives, which is kind of interesting because he's now my dad. He legally adopted me, you know, over 30 years ago, and so I refer to him as my dad, rather than my stepdad, because, you know, in my mind, anybody can be a father, but it takes a man of character, true character, to be a dad, and that's what he was and has been, and still is for, you know, for all of that time period. But
I think any of us that have ever had the blessing of meeting your parents, I mean, I don't know them that well. I've spent a little bit of time with them, but you got awesome parents, man.
Yeah, I did. I shared that with them over dinner last night,
Did you?
actually. You had mentioned that yesterday and gave me food for thought, and I started thinking about that. And, you know, I do take that for granted sometimes, for sure, but I'm super blessed in that regard.
But even with amazing parents...
That's right. You know, as the story goes, like a lot of us that either grew up in church or had a healthy background, for whatever reason, you know, we turn and take a different path. And despite the positive influence at that age and my youth pastor coming into my life at that point, I nonetheless, you know, chose a different road. And really from that point forward for the next 25 years, I allowed the enemy to steal that time, is how I describe it, you know. So a lot of prayer through that time period for mom and dad, you know. A lot of prayer and a lot of waiting with a lot of patience, you know, as they say, all things come together in his timing. It would have been nice, perhaps, if the timing was a little quicker, but you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I found the right direction at the time that I did. Better than perhaps 20 years after that, right? So
would you say like a lot of just floundering, a lot of just not progressing, just
Yeah.
more and more and more.
Yeah.
Your primary substance was alcohol.
Alcohol was primary, and
Mhm.
then throughout my 20s, I dabbled with a lot of other things as well, recreationally, I suppose. In my early 20s, I had an emphasis on cocaine,
Mm.
right? And it was during that time also that I had a run in and out of several secular recovery programs.
Mhm.
Starting off with a 2-day stay at the local hospital and detox,
Mhm.
then followed by a 30-day high-end resort treatment center down in Arizona, followed by a 6-month halfway house, also in Arizona, and then followed by a 2-week relapse prevention program out in Arizona. So, a handful of those secular recovery programs, not to say that those don't work for some people, certainly they do, but
Mhm.
statistically, as we both know,
It's pretty dismal. Yeah.
the percentages aren't real good for long-term success and recovery.
Right.
And so after that little run, I essentially gave up on recovery for 10 years plus, until I was in my late 30s,
Mhm.
about the age of 37. And here's the it begins really the best part of the story, is my journey with faith-based recovery, as I mentioned to you yesterday.
So a lot of success fail. A lot of getting information from a lot of these secular things. I mean,
Sure.
And like you said, those weren't anything that lasted. But I appreciate you saying that. You know what? I know that does work for some people. Obviously, it doesn't have real good statistics, but I think I have a lot of the similar experience as you, and I would be lying to say that they aren't part of eventually me getting redemption, recovery, whatever. Like I said, I've been wanting to use the word redemption more than recovery. Not that there's anything wrong with recovery,
Right.
but it just kind of more poignant to me. But
Yeah.
but I appreciate that, because there's people out there listening, and they're like they have loved ones, lots of failure, lots of this and that, and you know what? You just never know when it's going to take. You never know when it's going to turn for the better. And those things aren't wastes because they didn't produce the immediate result. They are can be part of. And I know that's so frustrating. I mean, 25 years, right? 25 years.
That's
So we got Bryan, great family, great experience, lots of little experience and whatnot. But we are in his late 30s, and he's going to start with the introduction to faith-based recovery right when we come back. Stay with us. Okay. Doing great, man. So, yeah, we still, we got a 3-minute break here, and doing great. Yeah. So we'll have another. I don't know how long this stint is.
This one is, let's see if we come back at 48:30. Almost 12 minutes, give or take, 10 to 12.
Okay, and then we'll have another break, and then another like 10, and then another break, and another 12. So, how you feeling?
Good. I had the wrong bud in. Now I can hear.
Yeah, the nerves gone down. Good. Yeah, you seem
Okay.
calm. Yeah, man. So we got. Good morning, Melissa, Meredith, Moorhead, Sean, or Christy. I don't know which one. It's one of those married couple Facebook. I think it's Sean.
We say hey to mom and dad if they're listening on Facebook Live on the road down to Florida.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. My brother says, "Hey, Brew."
Nice. What's up, Canny? So you had, was Clay Williams on a few weeks back?
Clay came on. Rob's been on.
Rob Sauer?
Yeah. So is Danny. Danny Hindley.
Yeah.
I've had all those guys on. It's been great.
Yeah, and the biochemist.
Brewer.
Brewer,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, he's the oldest 26-year-old I know.
and he's planning on starting getting involved with Christian addiction from a medical perspective down in Wilkes County.
Yeah, he wants to get a clinic, and I guess he's talking to like investors, and basically the idea would be people come in and they address them all in one location instead of saying, hey, look, here's what we think you need to go see this person, but the goal would be to get people stable and then to have people with the mindset of trying to work them off meds. Because maybe they were taking meds, but the idea that they're on the meds while they're actively using, a lot of using will produce, symptoms of mental illness, where it looks like you have a mental diagnosis. But once you get clean and sober, sometimes the symptoms go away through getting some good recovery, But yeah.
A protein that's found in cancer is also found in
Remember, they're on Highway 105 across from the Seven Devils entrance beside the Grand Union.
Crazy, huh?
Genetics of some sort.
Yeah. Similar proteins.
But that just means school and
It's
fall
a
mornings
commercial.
are beginning in the high country. That also means new
Bet.
boots and
Just under a
merchandise
minute.
arriving
Just under a
every
minute.
day at all three most boots and Carhartt locations.
So we'll talk for how
Check us
long?
out
How much
early and
longer?
often
We'll get
for
about a
the
12-minute
selection all
thing.
through the year
Break
that will
again.
keep
Break
you
again.
warm and
And then
dry
go back
this
on.
fall. Darn Tough socks.
Then go back on, then break again, and then go back on.
Okay.
We go to 11:30, so we're about 10 till 11 right now.
Most boots has it all.
We got about 30 seconds, so you're gonna have 10 minutes when we come back.
Oh, my name's Dave Wood with Freedom Electech. I've been advertising with High Country Radio for 2 years. A lot of people stopping by the showroom saying they heard us on the radio.
Hey, Pastor Dixon.
Overwhelming response, really, more than I thought we would get.
Oh,
We do a lot of things, and we were trying to get the
10
word out
seconds.
about all the different things we do, and people have been coming in and mentioning it directly.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to Recovery Talk, Hope and Help for the Hurting, 828-262-1567. That's the number to call if you'd like to ask Brian or myself, and we can check with Mike to see if he's taking questions today. I'm not sure. He is, so we could even ask Mike questions, the oldest 25-year-old you'll ever meet. 828-262-1567. Freedom Auto Tech is the show's official sponsor. They are ready to handle any car repair needs that you have. Give them a call, 828-355-4434. That's 828-355-4434. And I didn't say this last time when I was giving them a plug for what they do, but all the proceeds from Freedom Auto Tech go to support recovery here in the High Country through the program of Freedom Farm Ministries. So you could feel good about getting a good service done on your car, good job done, and also know that the profits are going to help for a good cause. So we're back with my friend Brian. Brian has brought us to the point to where he's got no complaints in the family life department really. He's been spinning his wheels for quite a while. He's in Kannapolis area. Is that when you were in Kannapolis before you went to your first place?
Yes, exactly.
You didn't mention.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you shouldn't, but you didn't mention that you had a long-term relationship going on at this point too.
That's right. Yeah, I was in a relationship with a woman for a good part of 10 years.
And that usually brings a heavy mirror on you quite a bit,
Yeah.
So what happened in your late 30s to start to begin you in a trajectory of a new direction?
Yeah. So I think I had mentioned earlier that essentially life had bottomed out. I had come to my end. The phase one, let's call it, of the end.
Uh-huh.
Right, of the
Are you saying there was another end after this?
Right.
End? Okay.
Phase one and phase two.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But all things come together in His timing, as I said before, right? So interestingly enough, the beginning of the journey began really with a reconnection with my mother and her cousin. down in Florida, right? A cousin located down in Florida, who got reconnected after 30 years of not having any communication. They somehow got in contact through email via another relation, I believe, and
Basically like you coming on the show, just another coincidence, right?
just a happenstance, right?
Right, happenstance.
And it was through that communication, you know, when they started talking, of course, eventually the cousin asked my mother, you know, so how's Bryan doing, by the way? And of course, Mom's response was not that good, actually. And this cousin just happened, he and his wife actually just happened to be the directors over the women's division, the Refuge Ranch, of a men's recovery, faith-based recovery program down in Okeechobee, Florida, called Dunklin. Once in a while, I run into people that are familiar with Dunklin.
I almost went there.
You know about it.
Yeah, I got denied because they didn't take anybody on medicine, and I was on a antidepressant, so they said no.
Okay.
But I know people that went there, yeah.
Yeah. I describe Dunklin as a combination of church, the military, and prison. Right?
Yeah.
A combination of those three things.
Don't you make pallets there or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
Indeed. I was a nail gun runner.
Nail gun runner.
Yeah, they put the little guys in the pallet shop. The big burly guys ran the logging machines, right? And then the mid-sized guys ran the lumber yard. And then once the lumber came off, refined, then they'd send it over to the pallet shop for guys like me to run nail guns and build pallets. So that's one of the primary resources for Dunklin in generating revenue. Yeah, excellent program. Don't get me wrong, but it is the epitome of tough love.
Yeah.
For sure. Confrontational and intentionally designed that way.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was, again, through that connection with my mother and that cousin down there that I learned of Dunklin, and that I made the decision that I needed some help, you know. And I know, you know, over the years, you know, that God was knocking on the door. I just denied that was happening, I suppose, and I was finally ready to make a change. And I remember being very scared. You know, I remember being very scared, and I think one of the things that I was scared of is, well, the unknown, right?
Yeah.
What it was going to look like after Christian recovery.
Right.
Right? Who would I become? What would I look like? Would it be strange or embarrassing, perhaps? I remember one thing I'll never forget my ex said to me when I shared this with her. She said, Bryan, anything other than what you are now will be an improvement.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
So,
that's
yeah.
a compliment. So you're at Dunklin. You got plenty of time to be in your head there because you're in a pretty systematic, closed world there, right?
Yeah.
You're there. You know what your schedule is all day long. There really isn't a lot of outside interaction going on.
That's right.
So you got a lot of time to think. So how did that end up?
So Dunklin is can be anywhere from an 8-month and 3-week program to an 11-month program, depending on the timing and how you come in and how it revolves, because it's a 5-phase program, right? And so
it's kind of weird. 8 months and 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We need an 8-month, 3-week commitment from you.
Right.
It's weird. So sorry.
So, you know, to my good fortune, I suppose is how I was looking at it. I came in and I was on the short end of the program rather than the long end. And so at the 8-month mark, right at the 8-month mark, I'd had enough. And I left the program, actually.
Confident, probably.
Well, I was still in a state of disobedience and rebellion, actually, is what it comes down to. You know, I'd had enough of the rigor of the program, the confrontation tactics that Dunklin uses.
Did you get caught having nail gun fights with people?
You know, I think I was reprimanded for shooting nail guns at people. Actually, now that you mention it.
I'm just thinking, being in charge of a program, I mean, you would have to pay people just to make sure people don't shoot each other with nail guns all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is your job. Just make sure they don't shoot each other with the nails, okay? Because as soon as you turn your back, nails are flying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I did.
So you left, and how did it work out?
So I left. I had enough. I timed it to where, you know, everybody had gone into class, you know, and I cornered one of the staff members and said, I'm done. Thank you for what you've done for me up until this point, but I've had enough, and asked the staff member to drive me into town. I had enough money in my checking account to rent a car, and I proceeded then to drive straight to the liquor store.
Straight
to the liquor store, yeah. Got a bottle of vodka, went to the convenience store.
Straight to the vodka, too?
Straight to the vodka.
Wow.
Yeah. To the convenience store to back that up with a six-pack, and I went down to the beach for a little while, for a little respite.
What beach did you go to?
Well, it was Stewart.
Stewart, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got tuned up for the drive home.
Nice.
Yeah. Called the ex and said, hey, I'm coming home. And she was a little confused, obviously, because...
Think you were, too.
Obviously, yeah. And so I drove home, drunk, actually. And that was the beginning of the end, so to speak. So for the next 6 months was a state of a relapse, and as it indicates in the Bible, things got exponentially worse.
Well, we're coming up on a break. So you've left Dunklin, you're on your way back, 6 months of more pain and suffering. When we come back, stay with us. We'll pick up the story where we left off.
It's the High Country's information station, AM 1450 and 96.5 FM.
I don't think I'd take you either, Paul. I'm just kidding. You could come here if you ever needed to. My friend that went to high school with me that's watching, he's in Georgia. He's in recovery. He said Dunklin wouldn't take him, but both his brother-in-laws went to Dunklin.
Our voices aren't on Facebook Live
Yep.
right now. Oh, they are?
Yep.
Okay.
People can hear us. Yeah, that's constantly going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you can, if you're tuned in, hello, Mom and Dad. Hope the drive's going well.
They're driving down to Daytona, Orlando.
Orlando.
Okay.
That's drive.
Yeah, they just came down from Des Moines, Iowa 2 days ago. That's an 18-hour drive.
Yeah. I would take drives to Chicago all throughout my childhood. 14 hours felt like forever. After that, I don't like driving very much.
Chicago's a haul.
One fun.
I went to Rockford last year and for a wedding. That was not fun.
I think once you get to, depending on the route you take, either Ohio or Kentucky, after that it's just boring. It's just flat land.
It was cool to go through the windmill area. It was like right before you got started
Dairy
heading
farms.
in. Yeah.
There'd be times like, oh, that's cool. 8th time, I don't care anymore.
Yeah. They were kind of like bewildering me. It was like there were so many that were spinning and so many that weren't.
Yeah, I didn't understand. Like,
and they're all like, they're like a little bit different, you know, pointed. And I'm like, how do these things work?
There was one time, when it was high school, we went to Orlando for like an unofficial senior trip. Like us, our friends, and our friend's mom drove. My buddy bought an entire James Bond like DVD collection. He's like, we're gonna watch all of them. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep first because it's 4 a.m. I'll wake up and go watch them.
Dude, that would take days, wouldn't it?
It felt like days. And he got agitated because I slept for 6 hours. I was like, I'm taking some Benadryl because my allergies are flaring up partially, but mostly because I know it's gonna knock me out. Wake up 6 hours later, just as we pull into the McDonald's for breakfast. Perfect timing.
Where are you from?
Originally Chicago.
Oh, yeah. I lived up in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah?
All through the 90s.
I've had a lot of friends up from Wisconsin.
That's right, Paul.
Madison.
Praise God, man.
How long you been in?
I didn't live in Chicago long. I was there for 3 or 4 years, and then moved to Georgia for about 9. and I've lived in North Carolina ever since. So, my friends call me a carpetbagger. I don't know whether to take that as an insult or an accurate statement.
How long have you been in radio?
Total of like 3 years maybe. It's my first year here. Be a year in January.
You like it?
Yeah, it's different. I used to work in TV news. Very different animal. A lot more drama.
In radio or in TV?
Well, actually, come to think of it, there's a lot of drama anyway. It's just different levels of drama. You know, I'd hear people complain. It'd always be weird. It'd always be like the female anchors or reporters always complaining about like the new girl that would come in, like the younger reporter, and like, how does she dress like that? Well,
I had a roommate up in Wisconsin who was a director at a news station.
Oh, yeah.
I remember sitting in with him in the control room one night for a program, and directing, take this, swipe that, all this. And one of the things that he would do actually when we were at the house, like friends, he would we'd get on the phone with each other while he was in the control room, and when he'd go to commercial break or whatever, he'd go, all right, you ready? And he'd pop a graphic, a little tiny graphic up on the screen, live, so we could see it. Kind of like, hey, what's up? He got in trouble actually. So the management caught on to him, and he was like, no.
I would, whenever I watch the news with my friends, which is very seldom now, I can always kind of predict what's about to happen next. I mean, it's not hard if you watch the news every day, and you're there for like 12 hours a day. But like, hey, so what's gonna happen? Well, give it like 10 seconds. You're gonna change the bottom thing, blah blah blah, and then like whenever something would go wrong, they'd always ask like, okay, what's going on? I don't know. I'm not there. I don't know why everything's going out. I don't know why everything's not going. Okay.
WSOC
Right.
TV, Severe Weather Center 9,
That's
High
weird.
Country Weather.
I was listening. I turned on last night. There was silence on the 96.5 last night.
Oh yeah.
On my way home, I was like, oh, the automation's down.
Yeah, this machine is a nightmare.
May end with a few snowflakes tomorrow night, but no accumulation expected. Just cold.
All right, so we got about
From Severe Weather
10
Center 9
seconds.
10 seconds.
for High Country Radio.
5,
This
4,
is
3,
AM
2.
1450 and 96.5 FM.
And welcome back to Recovery Talk, Hope and Help for the Hurting. 828-262-1567 if you want to call in and ask Bryan a question about a story. 828-262-1567. Freedom Auto Tech is the show's official sponsor. 828-355-4434. That's 828-355-4434. Freedom Auto Tech is ready to service all your car repair needs, and all the proceeds from that shop go to support men's recovery here in the High Country. So, Bryan, you just finished. Well, you didn't finish. You left early.
That's right.
You left 3 weeks early.
3 weeks early.
Man, you couldn't just do 3 weeks?
I couldn't take it.
But anyway, you just left a program, your first experience in a faith-based recovery program.
Yeah.
First thing you did was you got intoxicated. You're heading back to Kannapolis area to your girlfriend.
Yep.
And 6 months of just consistent relapsing and getting worse. And then what happened?
Yeah, just hanging out with some nefarious creatures and working day labor.
Okay.
Just doing what I could to get what I needed at the end of the day, essentially. And the ex finally had enough and actually kicked me out of the house, and I was technically homeless. And so also caught my second DUI, by the way, and spent a little time in the county jail, which was quite the experience, but certainly one that I look back on with retrospect, and just another variable on what the Lord used to transform my life that I needed to see. So
Working day labor, drinking vodka.
Yeah.
Probably the real cheap stuff.
Yeah, not real healthy.
Yeah, and it's all poison. But now a second DUI, kicked out. And so once again, realizing that I needed help, and then I needed to go somewhere for that help, that I didn't have the strength to pull myself out. Right.
And so I actually, if you can believe it, considered going back down to Dunklin. I was that desperate. As difficult as Dunklin was, and the fact that I left early, I actually made a phone call down to Dunklin, and they denied me.
Oh. My buddy Paul in Georgia says the Great Escape from Dunklin coming to a theater near you. So, coming soon to a theater near you. Maybe you could be part of that movie.
So I considered
What was the reason they denied you? Did they give you one? Or?
They didn't think that I was ready.
Oh.
They didn't see the seriousness, I suppose, of my request.
Okay.
They don't necessarily look as desperation as a reason to accept you.
Okay.
Right. I mean, again, it's Dunklin is serious business.
Okay.
That's just part of their agenda, I suppose. But I considered a Dunklin affiliated, quote unquote, let's call it a facility out in Mount Olive, North Carolina, called Potter's Wheel, which was founded by
a Dunklin grad, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's 6 month, a shorter. It was attractive to me because it was Dunklin affiliated with regards to the curriculum, but it was also a shorter program in 6 months. Okay. And so I went out there for an interview, and they declined me. Similar to you, what you mentioned earlier, because of a medical condition that they were unwilling to accommodate. It just weren't.
They're probably talking to the Dunklin guys down in Florida is really what happened. Yeah. It's a conspiracy.
No offense to Potter's Wheel. I'm sure it's a fine program, but again, just part of the story, part of the example and testimony. That wasn't where God wanted me. That wasn't the place for me to be. So I came back. I was on probation at the time, so I was required to come back to the Kannapolis Concord area before I made any type of move outside of the area. And when I was at Potter's Wheel, even though they declined me, I remember the admissions director gave me a piece of paper with a name and a phone number on it. And that name was Robbie Colley, and a phone number, and the name of Hebron Colony, interestingly enough. As you know, Robbie was once, God rest his soul, the admin director at Hebron Colony prior to founding Freedom Farm.
Right.
And so obviously the folks at Potter's Wheel thought that Robbie was still affiliated with Hebron. So I thought I was calling Hebron.
Okay.
But when I called the number, actually when I had the taxi driver that picked me up, or that was waiting on me actually at Potter's Wheel, that took me to the train station to bring me back to Kannapolis. When I got to the train station, I called that phone number, and Robbie Colley picked up the phone, and I said, I need some help. And I'll never forget the words that he said to probably most, or if not all of the guys. He said, son, how soon can you get here? We'll have a bed ready for you.
He hung up on me, but
yeah.
God rest his soul. I love that guy, man.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So lo and behold, I was, unbeknownst to me, I was calling Freedom Farm, and so I think that was on a Tuesday. I said, well, I've got to get back to Kannapolis Concord, meet with my probation officer, let him know that I'll be headed to this program up in the high country. And I arrived on Friday, November 7th of 2008, 10 years ago yesterday.
10 years ago yesterday.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what was different about coming to Freedom Farm?
So I like to describe it as, I kind of say tongue in cheek, Dunklin tore me down, and Freedom Farm built me back up.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But I needed the tearing down, the pruning, the crushing, the pressing that took place at Dunklin in order to be open to the process that occurred while I was at Freedom Farm. When I came to Freedom Farm, because I had broken my commitment to the Lord down at Dunklin that I had made, it was very important to me to complete the commitment that I had once broken. So when I came to Freedom Farm, I committed for a year. I ended up staying a little more than a year, I think about 14 months in total. But I was adamant, and I was serious. Fortunately, I had come to a point where I was serious about recovery, and I wanted to make a change. And that's really the beginning of where my relationship with the Lord truly started. As I like to say, it's really, recovery and sobriety is really just a byproduct of my relationship with the Lord. It's not the other way around.
So you came up, you overextended your stay at Freedom Farm. I mean, nobody's kicked out of a year at Freedom Farm. We just ask people to make that basic commitment of the 12 months. But you stayed, and then you ended up staying in the high country.
I did, yeah. So when I left and came up here, I essentially left the home that I knew, and the high country became my home, essentially. And one of the things that I always wanted to do over the years that I was unable to do because of addiction was go back to college and finish my degree. And so when I exited Freedom Farm, January 1st of 2010, I immediately enrolled in the local community college here in Boone a week later and started spring semester. Finished out my associates at Caldwell Community College here in Boone, and started applying thereafter to a handful of different universities in the state of North Carolina, not assuming that Appalachian State University would accept me necessarily.
Okay.
Hoping that they would, because I wanted to remain in the area.
Right.
But fortunately, I was accepted. I had pretty good grades coming out of Caldwell at a 3.9.
All right.
Yeah, not bad.
Probably helped you weren't drinking anymore.
No, yeah, certainly. Yeah, that certainly helped. But
yeah.
So yeah, not bad for a 42-year-old returning to college at that point. And in the fall of 13 is when I started over at the College of Business at App State.
Okay.
And graduated in December of 16. So coming up on 2 years ago.
So at the end of your higher education, what is your degree list now?
Yeah.
What do we have?
So we've got graduated once again from App with I think with 3.7, so with Latin honors, and my degree is a Bachelor's of Business Administration, a BSBA, in management with a concentration in entrepreneurship. So over the course of the time that, throughout that academic journey, I've also been involved in specialty coffee up here in the high country, which is...
Let's pause there. We got to break Kevin up, but when we come back for our final run, we're going to get into what life's like now with our college graduate, 42, graduated at 42?
No, started back at 42, graduated at 48.
48 years old. If there's anything to say about can't teach an old dog new tricks, not teasing, you're not that old, but there's people out there that think that they can't restart, but you are flying in the face of that statement, aren't you?
That's
but
right.
We'll be back. Stay with us. This is the final stretch, my friend. So we're going to have about a 12-minute bid.
Hampton's Body Shop and Record
That's a
Service
short
has a
break.
brand
This is
new
just
60-ton
Yeah, this
minutes.
is a quick one.
that will handle anything.
Hey, Mike. How
I
are you?
called you, I said hey to you earlier. You didn't say nothing.
Ah, sorry.
You know, what the hell were you in that band?
I was ignoring you.
Don't feel bad. Everybody else does. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good.
So whether your car, truck, or SUV is stuck in a tight spot,
Yeah, you know, that's the famous Mike Kelly, right?
Hampton's Body Shop and Record Service.
He's on the radio all the time.
Mike Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay.
He like literally speaks in radio voice all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
That's 264-3924.
We were talking hockey the other day, and he was
Service.
irritated with something. Not that we were talking, what we were talking about, but it was a move that one of our teams made that we both happened to like, and he was just yelling, but he was yelling in a radio voice, and I'm like, I was like oddly surprised, but at the same time, it was just like, at the same time,
I'd like to solve the puzzle, Pat. Big and tall.
That is correct.
this is,
And for a
I never
bonus,
had,
can you tell me who has
I never
the
was
largest
yelled at
selection of
in a
big and
radio
tall
voice. It's
apparel
very
in
different.
the high country?
Like I've been yelled at
Pat.
throughout my entire life,
Moe's Boots and Carhartt.
but it's always been like an assertive manner, but not like in a somewhat entertaining way. Like it's like you're really grabbing my attention with everything you're saying. So I don't know. I'll tell my parents next time they have to reprimand me, if they ever do, try radio voice. I might actually listen.
You'll find a great selection at low prices.
All right,
And if you can't
15
find
seconds.
what you're looking for, they can special order it. Stop in and see one of our 3 great locations: Gateway Center, Boone, downtown West Jefferson, or Tanger Outlets.
Here we go, 5
Rolling
seconds.
Rock. Come check
4,
out all the new
3,
Carhartt fall
2.
arrivals. They're coming fast.
Welcome back to Recovery Talk. Hope and help for the hurting. 828-262-1567. It's the number to call if you wanted to ask Bryan a question. We're in the final stretch, the last about 12 minutes of the show. 828-262-1567. Freedom Auto Tech is the auto shop here that exists for the sole purpose of supporting men in recovery. But it's a professional shop, and they're ready to service all your auto needs. 828-355-4434. 828-355-4434. No job big, too big or small. We will give you a good price and give you good service. So just give them a call if you got some auto needs. So my friend, you are in your mid to late 40s. Let's just say mid. That sounds a little bit
Well,
better.
you know, it's funny. I got to put these on to read. And what's interesting, I had a birthday like a month and a half ago. And
Yeah.
what's strange, I don't feel 29. You know, so I said that to a coworker a while back, and he said, "Well, you don't look 29 either." It's really accurate.
You, to be fair, you do not look the age you are. Not that you're that old, but you know, I do want to just say for a second, there are people out there that need to hear your story, man, because more and more often, the older you get, right, the further you get away from 29, people start to throw the towel in, and that they've missed out on life.
That's right.
And you haven't.
Yeah.
You have not missed out on life. You actually have kind of been the last 10 years restarting.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't think you regret it at all. You
Yeah.
know, that's why you wanted to come here and tell your story. And there's a lot of cool things happening for you right now, right?
Yeah.
I'm sad that we're losing a guy like you from our recovery community, our Christian community up here, but I'm excited also at the same time for your near future, and I'm looking forward to hearing what happens next.
Yeah.
So tell us, my friend, what's the future hold, or what do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's kind of crazy, really. But I believe that after 10 years of being up here, that God is finally calling me off the mountain and down into the valley,
Okay.
so to speak. And as I mentioned before the break, I've been involved with specialty coffee up here in the high country, which is really a fun industry to be involved with, and really in its infancy comparatively. What do I mean by that? Compared to, let's just call it commercial coffee, right, or junk.
Starbucks.
We won't mention any names.
Okay, no names.
But so, you know, throughout that time in coffee up here, you know, and through the academic journey, I had always considered remaining in it from a professional standpoint for those reasons that I just mentioned. And after graduation, I kind of put that on hold and took more of a traditional approach to the job search. And long story short, last year, I believe God impressed upon me that I was to combine coffee and ministry.
Now, you know what? I do want to just highlight something, because a lot of times, here's a guy graduated from App State, right? Business degree, business management, entrepreneurship. I mean, you're ready to go out and rock the world. And in the time while you're in college, you took what would be considered a basic menial job, right?
Yeah.
As a barista,
Right.
you worked for Bald Guy and Camp.
That's right.
Both.
Yeah, that's right.
And, I just wanted to say that, because here you got a guy in his 40s. He's taking a job behind making people coffee. And most people, like when I'm dealing with them and getting in recovery, they're like, well, I don't want to go and do this menial job. And here it is. You turned out that the thing that you were doing as a menial job turned out to be something you're very passionate about now.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah, shout out to Bald Guy and Camp Coffee Roasters for that, for sure, for introducing me to the world of specialty coffee. And so here we are, and the time is now. Again, I believe last year that these ideas came to mind very specifically and overwhelmingly, actually, that I was to combine these two things. And so it's not to be in this area, however. And so we're looking at the Northwest, actually, as let's call it a primary location. I have both short and long-term ideas and a vision for this project.
Probably stay away from Seattle.
Yeah, it's probably a little darker than than I would prefer. So we'll stay on the definitely the eastern side of the Cascades.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's exciting for sure, but it's also a bittersweet time. I'm in a little bit of a melancholy state, I suppose, because I'm leaving what I've come to know and love, and all of the true and genuine relationships that I've formed up here through Freedom Farm, through church at Alliance Bible Fellowship, through other folks up here in the high country. That's a little difficult, but as we know, God's direction is sometimes uncomfortable. I remember my marketing professor once told us, one of my favorite marketing professors over at ASU. We were sitting in class one day, and he told us, he said, life begins on the edge of your comfort zone. And I'll never forget that. And so is also true that, that God puts us in the direction of uncomfortable situations, and that's, certainly what I'm experiencing at the moment on one hand, but I'm very confident in knowing that this is the direction that He's got me going, and so that's exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
And part of we talked yesterday about because again, part of you getting on the show was you're leaving, and part of you're telling me that you're leaving, and I think it's just important to highlight here. You've been estranged from your folks for years and years. You haven't lived around them. They've been intentional and still been in part of your life, but there's been a tremendous reconciliation and healing there, and they've now retired, and now there's an opportunity to be closer to them, and that's kind of part of your decision-making process too.
Yeah,
I think that's great, because you, and I'm not just trying to brag on your parents, but you have a unique situation with your folks. If you ever find Bryan on Facebook, watch how they get together and play the piano and sing together. Yeah. I'm almost jealous.
Yeah, we started doing Christmas music videos instead of cards a few years back, so that's been a lot of fun. But that's true. Yeah, that's the other part. That's the other variable in the equation in this decision, is that Mom and Dad and and I have been apart really at a fair distance for over 20 years, and so I also feel led to be closer to them. So
Got a couple minutes left, my friend.
Yeah.
Just over 2. It looks like you wanted to read something, maybe, or no?
Yeah, I've got, I jotted down a couple of notes that, for those folks that are listening or that see this at a later date, wondering. I was always wondering, during my recovery process throughout Dunklin and Freedom Farm, I was always looking at guys that had more time than me, and looking at their success. I wanted to know what they did to get to that point. I want to know those people.
Right.
And like you mentioned earlier, certainly through secular recovery, even there were some practical things that can be learned along the way that can be applied also to faith-based recovery.
Sure.
On a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And I just can't emphasize enough in recovery how important accountability is. I think some people don't give that enough emphasis, perhaps, or take it all that seriously. But intentional accountability, actually setting up things intentionally in your schedule on a daily or a weekly basis to even act as roadblocks so that you can, come up with excuses, closing the door, on
I've always appreciated about you in our running in similar circles and seeing it. You've always had a core group of people that just were your buddies, your friends. And a couple of them, I think, recently moved away. Yeah. And we were sad that happened. But great advice, accountability, letting somebody in. I'm actually in a group right now learning that myself. Bryan, we're down to our final minute.
Yeah.
Did you have one more thing you want to say before we go?
Well, I'd like to share my life verse.
Go ahead.
That I think is important. Certainly not just for believers, but specifically for those of us in recovery, and that's Hebrews 10:24 and 25. That reads, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together, as some of us are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching."
Perfect way to end the show, man. Look, I want to thank you very much for being here, brother. I'm going to miss you, but I'm looking forward to hearing stories about you soon.
Amen.
We'll be back next week. Thanks for joining us today.
And products to help you budget, like
You did great, man.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go. Just like that, it's a radio show.
It's a wrap.
the country all the time, like Financial Peace University. Millions of
Give me
families
that
have
phone,
learned
will
how to handle money,
On
beat
the-
debt, and change
I already
lives.
got somebody
We've got
on
life-changing
Monday.
books like Dave's all-time bestseller, The
Thank you,
Total
sir.
Money Makeover.